Now, more now on this breaking news. So we just put this media conference in the last 15 minutes or so, just kind of popped up out of nowhere with Austrac making an announcement about action being taken against Westpac. Here to talk us through what it's all about is our senior business correspondent, Peter Ryan. Peter, g'day. Spell it out for us.
Well, Joe, this is a very big story. It's quite massive. Austrac, the financial intelligence agency, has accused Westpac of making 19.5 million breaches of international funds transfer regulations over the last 5 years, and that equates to around about $11 billion worth of transactions. Wow. The way this is meant to operate is that banks or any other financial institutions need to report transactions over a certain threshold, and Austrac is alleging that Westpac did not properly report these transactions. So we're talking 19.5 million international funds transactions, and these relate to Southeast Asia and the Philippines. So they're very serious allegations that Westpac is facing at the moment. And of course, just over 2 years ago, I was sitting here telling the story about the Commonwealth Bank that was accused of 53,700 breaches of anti-money laundering and terror financing laws, and the Commonwealth Bank ended up settling out a penalty of $700 million, which is very big. But at the time, on the face of it, it was never going to happen. But the potential penalty could have run into the hundreds of billions of dollars, $966 billion, which was never going to happen. But clearly this is a big problem for Westpac. Westpac actually did flag that Austrac was investigating in its most recent annual report, and it did reveal that it was working with Austrac, and that it had received a number of notices from Austrac relating to reporting failures, due diligence, risk assessment and transaction monitoring. But the significant part out of the annual report, Joe, was that Westpac said that Austrac's civil proceedings, which have been announced today, could result in, quote, a significant financial penalty, which Westpac is currently unable to reliably estimate. So Westpac has flagged this as a problem. They have flagged that there is a potential significant financial penalty, and that's what's been announced this morning by Austrac.
Yeah, and so is this kind of like when you go overseas, if you've got over kind of $10,000 or whatever it is cash and you're flying on a plane, you have to declare that when you go. Is this kind of like the banks have to do that? And do you know what that threshold is? Or is it also in relation to particular individuals that Westpac was required to report because there were suspicions about particular individuals?
Well, if you just go back to the Commonwealth Bank case, which is the biggest case study here, where the Commonwealth Bank admitted the 53,700 breaches, any cash transaction over $10,000 has to be reported to Austrac. So $10,000 is the threshold. The Commonwealth Bank said at the time that there was a software glitch that meant that certain people, and Austrac alleged at the time that this could have been bikies, drug runners, were using these intelligent deposit machines to put more than $10,000, basically to wash money. And so these inadvertent breaches got the Commonwealth Bank into a lot of hot water. We haven't seen the full details relating to Westpac. There had been a high level of expectation that Austrac would move on Westpac, particularly given that Westpac flagged this in the most recent annual report, and that's what's happened today. But clearly for any financial institution, but also a big banking institution off the back of a year's royal commission into the way that banks operate, it's significant, and it's going to mean that Westpac will be in issues and crisis management today, as usual.
And there's no suggestion that this was intentional by the banks to avoid detection for these people, so they attracted more money. It's kind of being described, or is the only allegation is that it was kind of like a glitch or an oversight, not an intentional
one. That's right. In the case of Westpac, Joe, Austrac has referred to serious systemic breaches. So similar to the case of the Commonwealth Bank, that the internal checks and balances didn't didn't pick this activity up, and at the time the then Chief Executive Ian Narev of the Commonwealth Bank said that it was a software glitch that had been fixed. You could imagine in the background the Commonwealth Bank knowing that AUSTRAC has been investigating a number of these breaches, alleged breaches of anti-money laundering and counter-terror financing laws, that there'd be a lot of activity going on at Westpac to sort those systems out. So no one's suggesting that these are deliberate glitches, but banks are massive organisations and institutions that have a lot of people working on compliance and regulation. So the fact that this has slipped through the system, they failed to report. AUSTRAC has detected the failure to report, and they're very concerned that the implication is that these unreported transactions are going off into Southeast Asia that could be used for any purpose.
And to this extent, that it's billion?
Billion,
like
11 billion.
It's confirmed that it's a billion?
Yes.
That this amount could be part of that oversight. It's kind of hard to comprehend how that much money could have gone out of Australia without someone realising before it got to that amount that there was something going wrong.
Well, AUSTRAC's role there, Joe, as the financial crime agency is to keep track of this, and they have their various sources, but banks are required to report, and often banks self-report these sort of issues, and this has happened in the past and effectively Westpac has said that they have self-reported. They've been working with AUSTRAC on this, but a few months ago we had the case of, not related to the Westpac case or the Commonwealth Bank case, but the payment platform PayPal found itself in hot water because it had not been reporting transactions, and AUSTRAC at the time alleged that PayPal unwittingly was being used perhaps by pedophile rings. So we're talking here about major serious crime. We're not just talking about a finance story or a finance glitch, but we're talking about the way that money can be used all around the world, where banks can be exploited and loopholes can be exploited. They can be used pretty much for the operation of day-to-day organised crime.
And if the Commonwealth and Westpac have been hit with this over the last year or two, are there any question marks now over the processes at the other big banks?
Well, you can be sure that every financial institution in Australia would be making sure that their systems are working, and if they have any potential glitches where they have inadvertently breached anti-money laundering or counter-terror financing laws, that they would be sorting those out, but most importantly self-reporting to get in front of AUSTRAC.
Yeah, OK, we'll leave it there. Senior Business Correspondent Peter Wright.